Hello, my name's Aryard, this is History Human, and there's a slight chance that you might be watching this video on a train. 200 years ago, the idea of travelling 40 miles across land in an hour would have seemed like a complete pipe dream. Nowadays, in most countries, it's completely normal. But how the hell did that all begin? Well, it all started with the dawn of the railways. Okay, well, I'd like to make a couple of things clear. Number one, George Stephenson did not invent the railways. He did, however, have a big part to play in railway history, which we'll probably deal with in a later episode. The idea of pulling carts along smooth, predetermined tracks has been around since the ancient Greeks. It was used in varying forms in the medieval period and still pretty much exists today. And the Manchester-Liverpool Railway was not the first railway, nor was the Stockton to Darlington. They existed in varying forms in the 18th century, although they'd probably be unrecognisable to us today. Okay, now that's out of the way. As I said before, railways were not a new concept in 1801. The ancient Greeks carried boats across a narrow peninsula using a wagonway called a dealkos. Boats were put in wagons, and those wagons ran along grooves set into the stone. In short, it was a massive wooden railway train set. Except instead of moving trains along with your hands, you used slaves. Oh, slaves. Those Greeks were really fond of slavery, weren't they? In medieval times, wooden rails allowed mine carts to be easily moved within mines, and the world's oldest funicular railway, the Reichszug, dates back to 1495. However, to talk about steam railways, we have to start with a man called Trevithick. Now, steam engines had existed before, but they were large and static and were mainly used in factories and mines. But here's the clever bit. He realised that those steam engines were small enough and powerful enough to move themselves along the ground under their own steam. He built a road vehicle called the Puffing Devil, but that soon exploded whilst Richard Trevithick and his engineers were out at the pub. Now, roads, of course, were not as smooth as they are today. If you wanted to move cargo across land, you either built a wagonway, which was basically a precursor to the railway, or you carried your cargo across water, on canals, rivers, or on the seas. Wagonways featured horse-pulled carts operating along metal rails. Operating on smooth metal rails allowed more efficient movement and the ability to carry larger loads. Trevithick saw this and thought to himself, hang on a second, my Puffing Devil was much more powerful than a horse, and the rails are much smoother than the roads. If I could put my Puffing Devil on those rails, they could pull more carts than a horse ever could. And thus the Penny Darren steam locomotive was born. Now that was how freight trains came to be, but what about passenger trains? Well, to discuss that, we're going to have to talk about the Stockton to Darlington Railway. The Stockton to Darlington Railway opened in 1825, connecting several collieries to the River Tees. It was originally horse-drawn, but adopted steam traction not soon after it opened. Now, the people that owned the railway stopped and thought to themselves, hang on a second, we can carry coal, why can't we carry people? I mean, it is relatively fast, and it's certainly better than walking. So, on the 27th of September 1825, the world's first passenger service ran on the line. Most of the 600 people that rode that service that day were placed in coal trucks, but a lucky few rode in the world's first passenger carriage, which was effectively known as the Experiment. The average journey speed, 12 miles an hour. And that's how the passenger railway service was invented. And since we don't commute to work in coal trucks, I guess the Experiment was certainly a success. Unless you're a piece of coal, in which case you're going to ride in a coal truck with your buddies, I'm sorry. Next week I'll talk about the Manchester-Liverpool Railway, and if you wish to see that video, please feel free to subscribe. Well, wherever the subscription button is, go click it. Hopefully I will see you next week. Goodbye!